I'm Jill Hopkins for Vocalo Radio. I am here at Wild Prairie Vinyl and Vintage with Nick and Maceo of the Oh My's. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey.
Welcome. This is amazing. So, our relationship, we've gone through it. I've interviewed you guys in the studio back at Navy Pier. I've interviewed you backstage at Lollapalooza. And the last time we saw each other, you were in my kitchen with Emma and Mello making Caribbean food. So being here at a record store in Ukrainian Village just seems to make sense for what we've got going on. What brings us to Wild Prairie, and why are shops like this important to you as musicians and songwriters?
Well, what brings us specifically to this shop is I grew up with the two owners of the shop, so
So they know all your secrets?
No, luckily,
Before you got good ones?
yeah, exactly.
Your G-rated secrets?
Yeah. So, they host a lot of amazing community events and releases and book release shows, all different types of stuff, DJs. So it just seemed like a good spot to come and do the interview. We also played a record store day thing here just last month.
And we're both we love records. I listen to them a lot. When I can afford them, I buy them. Until I can't afford anything anymore.
Yeah, I have that same problem.
Yeah. So I figured, it'd be a good place to do it because it's at least where a lot of our inspiration starts, and at least the music we grew up on is definitely found. You can find a bunch of it in here.
This is a great spot, and I'm real glad to be here with you because this feels like a smooth experience that we're having. Listening to the Oh My's is a very smooth experience.
Try to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's working. And then the new tracks, Don't Know Better and Strawberry, are serving some real, island vibes. I feel like we need that for the summer. But how do you manage to get to a place to write music like that when you live in a place that's so sharp and harsh and cold?
I think, partly as a response to how terribly cold it is most of the year. But then also I'm half Cuban and grew up playing Latin percussion and didn't really have any guitar lessons except from a family friend who actually was not too far from here in Humboldt Park, a Puerto Rican guitar player named Mervin Mendez, and he gave me a couple lessons, but my mom was like, you can only teach him boleros, and that's it. And so the little training I do have in music, most of it is centered around Latin music. And so even though, generally we don't consider ourselves Latin music or salseros, there's a lot of fusion going on in our music, but that's always at least some element. I can't really help it. It's kind of impossible.
It's in you. It's in your DNA. How about you? What gets you to that real chill place?
We've been working on a lot of music at Maceo's house, at our home studio, and in the last couple of years, his apartment's been a lot closer to the lake than in the past, and just
the lake.
A lot of, even in the wintertime, being in a house with windows as opposed to a studio with zero windows has definitely, the music that we've been working on all winter still has a lot of, it's not all sad winter vibes that were made this winter because we had a lot of sunshine coming through with the heat on.
That's true. Yeah.
The heat on, and we stayed indoors.
Shout out to people's energy.
Yeah, and just it is a reactionary. You got to sometimes make warm music when you're cold. So
something that I think is pretty evident in the music that you make is that you're always trying to outdo yourselves and challenge yourselves on not just every large scale release, but every song somehow seems like you're just trying to top the last thing that you've done. How did you manage to do that on Strawberry and Don't Know Better? What boundaries of yourselves were you pushing?
I think with those songs in particular, this new EP and the music to come, a lot of it has been informed by the process for making our last album, Tomorrow, which was kind of the most time we've ever spent in a studio, so it was very much a studio album. And prior to that, a lot of our projects, or the most of it, was kind of made at home, Nick and I. And so the production quality, and we didn't really know how to use computers, right? So like the production quality, just the use of sounds and exploring that we had never done before, and so doing in the studio was really great, and we learned a lot. And so now taking sort of pieces of what we learned there, in terms of production and how to use a computer, and coupling that with what has sort of been our strength, even when our production wasn't top notch back in the day, was at least the songs having some sort of element where you felt like you're in the room with us, or it starts in some sort of organic way, because I think that's, at least for us, where a lot of the strength of the potency in our music is when you feel like it's not that it's not this sort of like separate world when you step into listening to it, but like that it draws you in.
How do you feel about Nick challenging Nick on every song?
I think coming into the last 6 months, which is this project and then new music that we're working on, it's been just also looking at it as getting back to focusing on how to strengthen what's already there song-wise and feel more confident in the original vibe that is set just off of the first demo, or just going back to like whatever the feeling that got us actually excited about that first idea, as opposed to like how to mask whatever we're not sure about with this idea in new production tricks that we've learned or anything like that, because that's like what I feel like we're getting stronger and stronger at, is just now knowing how to manage all of the skill sets that we've learned in the last 3 years and
you can't
use
use
them.
all the tricks in every song. Although when you first learn them, you try to. You're like, bro, we should probably like reverse that and like pitch it up and like it's not the wrong speed, right? We should probably speed it up, turn it down, like
and then you have to play it live. You're
right,
like, oh.
exactly. Like I don't really know how this works.
Yeah.
So that's
So
that's
being
been
comfortable with the intimate moments of the songs, for sure.
Yeah, and that's something that, like, at least for me as a vocalist, you go through like ups and downs in terms of how you feel about your writing or your voice or whatever the case may be. And so sometimes when you're not feeling like so sound in your work or writing or whatever, then you try and like mask it with a bunch of other stuff, or like put an effect on my voice, or like do that, and then eventually often you just lose what the point of the song was, or what what's actually going to engage the listener. So a lot of trusting in ourselves a little bit more, and that's a lot easier to do when you like at least conceive the ideas at home in a comfortable space where there's your kitchen really close, so if you want to take a break you could just whip something up, or I feel like that's been really helpful, living in the same place that we're starting these ideas or building them before we go into the studio and make them big with drums or whatever other things we can't do at home.
Do you ever look back on some early recordings and feel like you might miss some of that kind of touch and go analog rock stuff?
We were just listening to like the first project that we disappeared off the internet and like doesn't it's really just like
can't even Google it.
It's our first demos now that are just like old demo recordings. For a while that was the only recordings we had, so we had them on iTunes, and
but people still every once in a while be like, man, I love Above the Influence. That's my jam. But I'm like, what? I was like, I got it. And they're like, I got the CD, bro.
Oh man, because that's the only way.
But what I like realized listening to a lot of that stuff, whatever day that was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, there was at the beginning stages, we were very hard headed.
Yeah.
And also really not informed, and just were like, I think there wasn't, at least now, and especially like, I don't know, at just that stage in life, that young, like there's not always a lot of intentionality.
Yeah.
And you just, oh, this feels good. Oh, what is this? And so it was a lot of experimenting like that, but then like things that were very basic, like we weren't into like affecting things. You know, like we weren't like
even reverb. They were
yeah,
like very
like we weren't into
simple
affecting things, and we weren't into like editing mistakes.
Just letting it.
Like yeah, you
There's
know,
like
so-
fully
like,
wrong just
notes.
notes
Just-
from every instrument.
But what I did gather from it was like there's a couple songs in there like wow, this is like a really actually good song. Like I sat down and played it in like any of these songs in like 10 years, and I like started singing and playing just with the guitar, which is where it started with back then anyways. I was like, damn, this song's actually like better than like half the songs I just wrote, you know, like damn, we might have to bring this one back.